Jagdish has joined an early stage startup. Of course, he has over 21 years of experience, worked for subsidiaries in the luxury space, Chanel, Celio. Most recently, he's been with Spiker, then decided to do something of his own. And finally, now he's at Amaha trying to change the way people feel. And of course, Piyush needs no introduction. We heard Jaideep talk about him as well. He's been the oxygen in the cylinder, knowing when to titrate and when not. Piyush has been with Rebel for over 5 years now, and of course has again 20 plus years of experience. Was with Vodafone for over 11 years, 12 years, I think. And it's a privilege to have the two of them talk through their journeys with us today. Before we jump into this, maybe let me just take a quick few minutes to just talk about this concept where we always look at corporate governance and look at it as a process, right? And the reality is we are working with startups, and often they're looked at as agile companies, disruptors, those who are ready to innovate. And then you feel this overhang of governance saying, oh my God, are you going to hold us back? Are you going to pull us back? And that's exactly what the idea today is to actually look at corporate governance center and middle and say, this is really a strategy tool. And that's really for all the founders and investors here to say, what can we do to really change that perception and make it work for us, right? So a little bit about what Lightbox has been doing over the course of the past 3 years is we embarked on our ESG journey. And again, we looked at ESG as an impact. And thanks to all the founders here who sort of, helped us craft that. And we've reached a stage where we've begun to take baby steps. At least we are tracking some of our environmental footprint, some of our social footprint. But I think the one area that it's difficult to track because, you can't really measure, let's say, it like emissions, is governance. And what we did this year, thanks to my team and the support of all the founders and the portfolio, was released, what we call a corporate governance playbook. And we did that because we thought that corporate governance needed a curated approach. So we had to look at it as an early stage approach, a growth stage, and then finally a pre-IPO company kind of a stage, right? And why are we doing that? We are doing that because we believe in the long run, this is definitely going to add to the values that our companies really earn. What we've decided to do is looked at a stage-wise evolution. We believe it's a collective responsibility. And last but not the least, we need to add some method to the madness while preserving the innovation spirit. Right, so we've looked at 5 pillars in our corporate governance playbook toolkit that we've released to the portfolio. We look at board governance, risk management, financial business integrity, stakeholder management, and generally how you're organizing your organization, right? So the structure, the people, the processes. So that's a little bit about what we are doing. We also have a detailed process about how we are going to go about this. I won't go into the depth of it. I'll jump right in with this. And maybe the first question, let me pose to Jagdish. So at an early stage, and the focus I'm going to make on is really finance controls and systems. And the topic today and the theme that came out in all of our conversations earlier was predictability of performance, right? Sure. And effective finance control systems are very, very important to do that. How are you thinking of that at this stage?
Sure. So Amaha is evolving. It started off as just a digital channel. It evolved to a center-based channel. It evolved to a B2B channel. And the next phase, which is coming in next year, is the IPD channel, which is the inpatient department. So as the startup matures, you grow into a phase where you need to put in robust controls, which includes robust MIS systems, key KPIs to monitor the business, which is part of your portfolio, which you present to the leadership team, to the revenue generation team, and the strategy team as you go on a monthly basis. A lot of this are being developed and nearly developed since I joined here the last 3 months back. The next phase is obviously going to be putting in various tools of forecasting, because that's a challenge. Amaha is in a mental health care business where it's not a consumer-driven business. It's generally, demand is very difficult to justify. So that's the next phase of putting in various forecasting tools, whether it be long-range planning, short-range planning, and a lot of cash flow generation as you go into the next phase. In this, obviously, data plays a big tool. we have developed an internal IT system in Amaha, which is Meta, which gives in a lot of data for the revenue team to play on, to work on, to discuss on, and to obviously delve on as you grow the business. But data is very, very important in this because as you grow, Amaha has grown. Just to give an example, there were 20 people. There were 20 in our team 3 years back. They are 350 now, and it's a growing business. More than nearly there are 200 in the revenue generations team, which includes psychiatrists and therapists. So I do think you need to give them the right data, the right tools to help them in their process. Lastly, but not the least, obviously, systems play a bigger role. So getting the right auditors, the right internal auditors, keeping a huge focus on technology plays a very, very big role.
Piyush, you've been responsible for really building systems and processes, and you've been through a really large fundraise recently. What is true sophistication of a finance function, and how are you thinking of that?
Yeah, I mean, see, the ultimate goal of finance function is to be the enabler to the business, right? And I think different stages at which the company is, the investment in finance function also relates actually. So if I had to step back and say that which are the core finance verticals, right? To my mind, there are 5 core verticals within the finance function. The first one is core controllership. It's the traditional bookkeeping that a finance does, right? Which is more about the payments, receivable, working capital management, and audits. I think here, irrespective of the stage of the company that a startup is, having a Big Four as an auditor is super important, right? And then essentially what controllership function does, it solves for 2 problems. One is the accuracy of data. Second is the timeliness. Accuracy is of paramount importance because any decision that a business takes, it is banged on the data that is presented for, right? So the accuracy. Timeliness, again, I know we spoke about quick commerce and all. It's also relevant in finance function. The timeline to close the audit is 30th September. So you get 6 months to close. But in a way, 6 months finance team is doing the closing rather than focusing on value addition to the business, right? So in FY23, we used to close our 15 subsidiaries by 30th September. In FY24, we closed our 15 subsidiaries and consolidated books of accounts by 30th of June. And in FY25, we have the goal to complete the entire audit by 31st May, which is essentially the time when the public listed companies are closing the books. So I think accuracy is important, but over a period of time, as the business matures, we should prepone this timeline. What it does is that it gives credibility in the ecosystem. Suddenly, when you're talking to your investors or prospective investors or bankers, and then you talk about numbers, they will always say, but hey, do you have audited accounts? And on 1st of June, if you're able to say, I have audited accounts to share with you, the conversation credibility enhances actually, right?
I think Temasek was very pleasantly surprised, right? To
Yeah.
see when you told them on June 1st you were done. Yeah.
So this is the core. Building on to this, Jagdish also mentioned about it, is more the predictability of the business. So that's the second vertical, the financial planning and analysis, right? Including the investor relations. It starts with using the data, what is being prepared by the controller. And over a period of time, it needs to evolve to a decision support, right? Because Jaideep also was mentioning about, various vectors of growth and capital is limited. And essentially, Rashmi, to your point, we cannot as a finance function sort of stall the growth of the company, right? Companies would want to experiment. And as a finance team, we should partner in that. So essentially, what we need to do is develop a decision support whereby the cost of experimentation is measured. And then you take a decision to scale up. So that's the second vertical. Third is legal and secretarial. It is more standard. And as the investor base matures, you have to strengthen that vertical.
Have you automated that a lot, given your scale now?
Yeah. So I'll come to that. So third is legal and secretarial. Fourth is internal audit. Internal audit is more seen as a auditor or a policing function, but it needs to transition. It is again more an enabler to the internal stakeholders. We have 400 plus kitchens across 3 geographies. We have 6,000 folks who are working in these kitchens, right? Internal audit gives assurance to the internal stakeholders that things are working fine, or in case any specific area needs a deep dive, they are your force to be able to do that, right? And the fifth is, Rashmi, to your point, all this thing is good, but now the greater focus needs to be on automating these things, right? So automation is where we think about it. One is the ERP. We migrated from a SAP B1 to now SAP S4 HANA, which we believe is a scalable solution going forward. Second is the whole internal tech, like Jagdish was mentioning. I think over a period of time, that realization has come that finance should play a very important role in working closely with the technology team and shaping up the internal tech. And third is we have to release some bandwidth from the technology by buying off-the-shelf products wherever it's possible.
I think there are some key risks, Jagdish, to your business, right? Patient data, privacy. It is a matter of trust. And if anything leaks, no one's going to come back to Amaha. So suddenly, this risk can now be utilized as actually a customer retention tool or a brand and a trust building tool. Could you talk about how you're addressing this?
In Amaha, if our mental health services team, which is the therapists and the psychiatrists, are our lifeline, technology is the backbone. So technology and product is the backbone for us. Obviously, client data is very confidential, and hence privacy of data is sacrosanct. We've put in a lot of effort to ensure that, obviously, there's no leakage, everything remains. It starts from very, very strict access controls. Very few people have any access controls. It's generally the clinicians or the CTO who has access controls to it. Very, very strict technology-based. So we have a VPN. It's a two-factor authorization. There are strict firewalls which have been put in, and a lot of things which is made to make the system completely difficult to come into, obviously, unless authorized. We have strict checks within the organization of audits, which is both internal and external of the system which is there. We have got a lot of accreditations and certifications right from ISO 27001, which was recently updated in 2022. We also comply to the US and European standards of data privacy and cyber security. So in Amaha, technology plays a very, very enabling role rather than being just a back office or a system role. It plays a more business role to the function.
And then, Piyush, in your case, I remember you saying, I go to kitchens and I visit them. And I don't know too many of CFOs who go on field and actually visit absolutely areas like these. How do you manage the food hygiene, safety factors, and what is your team doing in that regard?
Yeah, again, being in this sector, right? Food is super important because consumer, whenever they order, every time they will consume in their body. So it's very, very critical that the hygiene, the FSSAI norms and all are taken care of. Now, whereas there are trainings and the guidance which are given to a 6,000 plus force, you need some way to validate this at a periodic interval. So we have a field audit team. It's a team which is 25 plus odd members. Their job is more around trying to do a camera audit. So through the CCTV which is present in the kitchen, there are checklists which they validate and gives a score to that kitchen, right? And we know the parameter beyond which only a kitchen should be open. In case it's a negative score, kitchens get shut down, before which they have to rectify it. The second is visiting these folks also visit the kitchens, and they cover each kitchen once in a quarter. It's a surprise visit. Here the objective is to do a process review. So there is that 30 plus point checklist which is there, which is reviewed. Second is the inventory, which is books versus the physical. Third is cash, and fourth is the fixed asset. Through this mechanism, we are able to rate the kitchens on this parameter of field audit, right? And it also generates some of the themes that better kitchens, what are those processes that they are doing, and you sort of want to replicate into kitchens which are yet to sort of come up the ladder. So I think this is one thing that really helps us.
This rolls into your team?
Yes, this is independent. Yeah. This does not, there needs to be a friction in the org. So this does not report to the business team. It's an independent team, rolls up to internal audit head. But this is about check for them. but ultimately they are the ones who are coordinating with the customer and all, right? I mean, we are more a back office. The front end is the kitchen. So what is it that we do to enable them? That's the other part that we need to solve for, which is where over the last few years we have implemented whistleblower and posh as a very, very independent mechanism for them and even other back office staff to reach out for any concerns that have. There are a set of people who are part of that panel. They will investigate that and the actions are taken.
Just for context, it's Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, right? So that's the acronym for POSH. So maybe we'll move to the next slide. I think this is about building correct kind of boards, right? The composition of the boards, why it matters. Maybe Jagdish, do you want to comment on? It's early, I know.
Yeah, it's early stage, but I do think boards play a very, very big role in value creation and deciding the path the company takes as it moves ahead into the future. I think boards, other than strategy, I think they have got more four matters which they help, which is specifically people, systems, finance, and the brand. And their acumen and their expertise obviously helps in moving the company forward. It helps to have an external or an independent, say in Amaha, it would help as we go forward to have an independent external mental health expert, because it gives another end of the way of your thinking. So it makes you broaden your horizon, look into your own requirements, and get an independent observation on the practices which are being done internally. And obviously, more so, I think the board helps you to get into a good decision-making process. And board which is proactive as well as regular will surely help the company to meet its vision 5 years down the line.
This also gets challenging at times, Piyush. And as the company scales, you have a lot of investor nominees sitting on boards. You are trying to find the right balance between independence, experts. What are your learnings and what would you advise young companies to do differently for the board composition mix?
See, I think one is about that the more transparent you are, it helps into a good conversation. Some of the things like data sharing and all should be part of hygiene. So in fact, the Lightbox team only sort of told us a couple of years back that there are times where usually the MISs are shared by 20th of the subsequent month, right? But it's like half month gone where, maybe the stakeholders do not have the visibility. So we were guided and we sort of implemented that as a practice is to share a EBITDA flash within the first week, which means the number is something that the board has the visibility. The why part of it gets clarified when we send the investor MIS on the 20th. I think this just helps to have a very objective discussion during the board meeting. And we've been fortunate enough that with our board, I think the strategic direction, the choices that we make and all, there is a very, very constructive discussion. And it also is a check on what we can do and how much we can run or when we need to sort of hold on. So that's something that's worked well. I think something that we could do better is having an independent director inducted in the board. Some of these things are not only required when you go public, it becomes mandatory when we go public, but there is a reason why these things are sort of there in the public domain, right? We believe that for certain specific skill sets, it would be good to have the independent board members inducted earlier in the journey.
And are both of you thinking of certain specific skill sets that you would like to build in as the company grows?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the way we think about it is that, there are a couple of functions which are more specialized. For example, a finance and a technology, right? I would definitely look forward to someone who has spent 20 years in the public market domain, right? To be able to look up to and get the guidance, right? So this is one of the skill set that we look up to. Technology is another thing. Things are ever changing. Globally, something has already solved something. You could want to just embrace that actually. And third could be more on the business side, right? It's need based. Maybe we want to go more on multiple brands to be built or some scalability. So whatever is the problem, try to think about it and solve it through someone who has sort of done it at a scale and for a long period of time.
All right. So that brings us to really the last question. Maybe we have one last question for everyone. And I think this is more just your experience, right? And really the idea is to say how much of governance can fold into our values, because we are now going to be more and more well run, right? So just quick experiences that you've had in any of your fundraising rounds. And
So obviously, if you are well governed, it gives you an increase in valuation, no doubt about that. As we go forward, it's becoming more and more transparent. So the more better you focus on your governance and keeping to your ethics and regulations, I think it will surely catch your premium. There is no doubt about that.
any examples from what you recently experienced, Piyush?
No, I think better governance is a hygiene stage at which companies are, and you have the investors putting in money, both private or public. I think this is a base expectation that should be there, and we as a management and more important finance teams owe it to the investors. So I think it's a hygiene, but at the same time, it's also evolving, right? For example, in the current Temasek round, whereas the finance, legal, and tax due diligence we are used to doing, but I think the commercial due diligence and ESG, right, was where maximum amount of time was spent. And ESG, we believe that there is a long way where companies can actually, one is project what they are already doing first to capture, and second is try to see that what is that purpose that you want to solve. While you keep building businesses for a commercial objective, there are some things that you can solve for larger com at the society also. ESG, we believe, is that part actually. So
And there is no reason why business plan and that can't converge. It has to, eventually find
yeah,
convergence.
for example, in our business, right, solving for an alternate solution of use of plastic is something that's important for us to do, because today's generation is far more aware. And honestly speaking, over the next 20-30 years, consumers will actually get associated with a brand which is more aware about the impact to the environment and all. So I don't think ESG is more like a good to do. It is in fact must to do at this stage.
Jagdish, any comments you have on the impact
I think
front?
in
It's huge for
ESG,
you.
Amaha generally for the other side falls in the S side, because more and more companies are looking into the mental health well-being of the employees. So indirectly fall into the S side, wherein we give the social part of it to most of the corporates. At our end, we do a lot of engagement with NGOs to delve into the mental health sector, to get more knowledge to people about the mental health requirements. It's obviously COVID has played a big boon indirectly to it, because it got people to realize that mind is equivalent to body, and you also need to take care of your mind as you take care of your body. And similarly, in our subsidiary, which is Children's First, a lot of workshops are also done to inform the new age parents about the importance of child development, and as they go into and take precautions or therapies earlier rather than wait for the foreseeable future.